welcome to the RHS Chelsea Flower Show 2015 on the red button. This week, Anne-Marie, Powell and myself are bringing you privileged access to the 15 large show gardens and their designers for our exclusive coverage of the BBC RHS People's Choice Award. On Thursday, the power will be with you to potentially change the lives of one of our designers forever by voting for your favourite garden design.
That's right. Matt Kitley won last year's coveted award with his Help for Heroes garden. And you know, he soon got the royal nod when Prince Harry called him and asked him to design a garden for his African charity. Now, we've got 5 more amazing gardens to show you today. But don't worry if you missed yesterday's. On Thursday, we'll repeat all 15 and you can choose your favourite.
So shut up those shears, lock up that lawnmower and pay close attention, because here come the next 5 fabulous designs competing for the People's Choice Award 2015. The question on everyone's lips this year is, will rising young stars Harry and David Rich keep their upward momentum going with their innovative Cloudy Bay garden? And can the boys tempt your vote with a glass of red or white? They're hoping so.
The main concept behind the garden is to depict the attributes of the Sauvignon Blanc and the Pinot Noir.
So the characteristic of the red wine is quite an earthy, quite a textured palette. So we've really tried putting that into the planting scheme. And then with the white wine, it's quite fresh, delicate, quite zesty.
So the main theme behind our planting is this matrix of grass that kind of floods the space and kind of creates this kind of unity that kind of holds the whole design together.
And so planting in the garden contrasts the hard landscaping in the way that it's very soft, very natural. We wanted to replicate a kind of a natural meadow. So that against the harsh edges of the poured concrete, I think blends and really softens the garden. One of the key features in the garden is the moving shack, and this is a building we've drawn inspiration from Cloudy Bay shack in Marlborough, New Zealand. And so we've got the idea of the shack, but we really turned it on its head and made it move.
We didn't really want to kind of keep it just as a building. We wanted to have it as something that moves, that people can be involved in. It creates different perspectives, and all of this just by pressing one button. We thought, why not put it on some rail tracks and use some turntables and industrial mechanics, and then balance that out then with soft planting and kind of textures through material choices.
Another feature that we've got is a drop-down table set within our boundary, and with pull-out benches, and when you pull the table down, it reveals this beautiful art piece. And we've put in kind of structural stone walling, dry stone walling, which is quite classic, very Welsh kind of heritage. The trees are beautiful, they're features on their own, and then like a quite architectural aged oak decking. That's something quite different, and that's quite a feature in itself.
So the biggest challenge creating this garden was probably working next door to Dave for too long. No, I think really it was getting our heads around the mechanics and the kind of industrial side of the space, and I think it was just, it was being able to make sure that relationship that the shack has, it doesn't sit too proudly and it actually becomes part of the garden.
Is the shack too prominent? Well, I guess that's the beauty of having a movable building. It depends where it is in the garden. And yes, the garden is very industrial, but it's also magical. This building reminds me of the great glass elevator in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The planting also has a confectionery quality with caramel-coloured verbascums, these candy floss-topped Deschampsia, as well as the carob tones of geranium samabor, a brilliant plant for shade. And there's plenty of planting here too, swaying like a meadow between these tuffets of yew. So, does this garden, this movable feast of a design appeal to you? Do you like the industrial hard landscaping and the balance of soft feminine planting? Well, if so, perhaps it deserves your vote.
I bet Adam Frost is having great fun at Chelsea this year with his exuberant young helpers from the Homebase Garden Academy scheme lending a hand. As it's his last Chelsea garden, will your vote give him a fond farewell to remember?
The concept of the garden is a community space, but it's very much inspired by Powell House, which was a early 20th century design movement which brought everybody together from all the different disciplines, crafts as well, into one place. So that sort of feeds the community idea, but also it's about bringing community into urban environments. The inspiration was a particular man called Marcel Breuer, who trained at Powell House. What I found fascinating about him was he went on to design probably 150 to 200 concrete buildings, but with no formal training. So I sort of looked at him and then looked at his work and looked at what he produced, and he very much runs right throughout the garden. The main features of the garden really is at the back of the garden sits this wonderful sort of building made of concrete with this wonderful cedar curtain, and it's that curve and hopefully give a bit of softness to the building. So from there, literally you work your way down the garden, and we've got some pools, we've got lawn areas, we've got planted areas. The two pools are filled by two water walls which are Corten steel, but they're actually corrugated rather than just smooth. The water runs down the channels. The planting needs to be quite strong, so it was about bringing wildlife into the garden, but also it was using those colours, that earthy sort of colour of the Corten. And so we've started with sort of rich oranges right through to dark crimson. But in between that, there's sort of a powdery blue that's sort of going to dust itself over the top. And then the element of surprise really is behind the building, 3 Certidophyllum japonicum, but under those are underplanted with some tree ferns. And then last but not least, you've got these taxus domes that weave their way up the garden, hopefully pulling the whole thing together. I think some people are going to love it and some people are going to not, but what I hope they realise is that actually we don't have to react negatively to concrete, and there's hundreds of urban spaces that need greening, and maybe this garden might inspire a few people to go out and green a few urban spaces.
The structure at the rear of the garden means that the space can be used all year round, no matter what the weather. But also the meadow on the roof means that wildlife would enjoy using it too. It would be buzzing with wildlife on a sunnier day. Adam has cleverly used a circular motif bouncing through the garden to unify the space. It's something that you could copy at home. Adam's plank combinations are always strong, and we've got some wonderful groupings here that just glide through the space. Just look at these irises, the geraniums and the jolly geums that really bring the garden together. It's an exquisitely planted garden, but does it get your vote?
With experience of fighting on the front line, former Army officer Marcus Barnett is well equipped to do battle at Chelsea. His design reveals an artistic side that combines modernist painting with the landscapes of Norfolk.
The central concept of the garden is inspired by the distill movement, which came from Holland in the 1915s and 20s. And it's a process of incredible simplification and abstraction. There's an overlap between the distill movement and memories of my childhood. So when I was younger, I'd go and play in the fields and the rivers and the valleys and woodlands near my parents' house. And inspiration for the garden has been condensed and distilled and simplified. So elements of those memories, the rivers, the water, the hedges, the trees, are now present in our garden for Chelsea. The main features of the garden are 2 very large and crisp concrete walls. There's a very distinctive, dark, long, reflective water rill. The garden is on a series of levels. There's a fantastic seating area, a very, very relaxed, calm seating area. And of course, wonderful plants and 2 absolutely stunning trees. The planting that we've chosen for the garden is very much in the theme of Piet Mondrian and the primary colours. We're planting in very, very bold, stark coloured blocks of green, blue and red. But in those blocks there'll be movement. It won't just be delivered by one plant, it'll be a series of plants, so there'll be tonal change, textural change in those coloured blocks, and those stark primary colours are offset by greens and whites. And then also we've got Osmanthus burkwoodii. They're multi-stemmed, absolutely stunning, and they offset the very bold planting plan. I hope the impressions that people take from the garden will be positive, clearly. I hope it'll be liked. It's obviously very important that any design that I do is welcomed. But I do think it is bold, it is abstract, it is striking, and it might not be for everyone. I don't think you'll sit on the fence saying, oh, I kind of like it. I think you'll say, I absolutely love this, or you'll wonder what we were up to.
Well, I'm a fan, and what I particularly like is the clever use of levels. There's tabletop hedges, and then you skip down some stairs. It's only 40 centimetres deeper than the surrounding ground, but it doesn't half give this seating area a lovely, cosy feeling of enclosure. The planting is fresh and contemporary, and in these Mondrian-esque blocks. There's white ones with foxgloves and sweet rocket, which is such a good plant for shade. And then there's these zingy yellows with Doronicum and spurge. And of course, at the centre of the garden is this giant canal that links all the beds together. So, if you're the type of gardener that likes sitting out and perhaps reflecting in your garden, maybe this design deserves your vote.
Karmelia bin Zaal obviously loves a challenge. She's bringing a corner of her United Arab Emirates home to Chelsea. She's embracing a big religious theme, and as if that's not enough, this is her first ever show garden.
I chose to call my garden The Beauty of Islam because I felt that it was a representation through a garden of all the positive elements of our religion and of Arab culture in general. So the main element of the garden is water, which ties the garden together, and there's a journey of water through the garden. For Islamic gardens in particular, water really was about the rebirth of the soul. It was really also to give a sound and a peace within the garden where you could really contemplate and relax, because as we all know, the sound of water is also soothing. But also its functionality, so water was there to irrigate and feed the garden. And it's quite an architectural garden. It has a fair amount of hard landscape, but I'm really hoping that the plants will soften that and also help to add to the structure of the garden. So the planting really represents the spread of Islam and Arabic culture through trade, the spice route in particular. So I have plants from Madagascar, Indian Ocean, Africa, and Europe. So my plant selection has been difficult to source, but I hope that it's going to be interesting because there's plants in that garden that most people won't have seen yet at Chelsea. One of the features of the garden is a sculpture depicting Allah written in calligraphy. Again, it's such a beautiful feature. The same calligraphy artist, Hamda al-Hashimi, she did a lovely piece of calligraphy for me, which was a surah from the Quran, which says, "The gates of the Garden of Eden are open to them." And this, for me, I felt linked humankind and the earth together, and is part of our religion, and is a very important principle of our religion. I'm so excited and overwhelmed by being at Chelsea for the first time. It's also my first ever show garden, so it's been challenging, it's exciting, but I couldn't be more thrilled at being at Chelsea. It's an honour to be participating with all these wonderful garden designers.
Now, it might well be Karmelia's very first Chelsea show garden, but it's fabulous for me to see that a woman has created a garden with such confidence and grace on her very first outing. The restful tranquility of this softly shimmering space creates an atmosphere that one just wants to soak up. Typical of the Emirates, but unusual at Chelsea, wonderful specimens of orange, pomegranate and an olive hedge anchor the space. As in any good Islamic garden, water glides through and is at the heart of the garden, cooling, calming and soothing. What an inspiring woman. But do you think her garden's a success?
A Brit all the way from the land of Oz, Charlie Albone has travelled more miles than most, and he's also been on another long journey, a deeply personal and moving one that has inspired his time in between garden.
So the concept behind my garden is a space to meet my late father and tell him about my life since he passed away. He died when I was 17 and I was totally at peace with that, but that was half of my lifetime ago. So this is a garden called The Time in Between, and I want to tell him about my life in between his passing and now. My dad has no idea that I live in Australia, that I work in horticulture, have a stunning wife, beautiful children, and I really wanted to just create a garden to meet him and tell him about my life. So the main features of my garden, well, it's split into 3 sections really. The first section is a path through planting all plants I can have in my own garden in Australia. The path is made up of single slabs of sandstone that are 2 meters by 1 meter. And I've chosen those because I wanted the path nice and wide so I could walk with my family and my father through the garden. The centre of the garden has a water feature which is 4.5 meters wide, but only shallow, 300 millimeters deep. And that water is going to disappear out of that water feature within 10 seconds. That's supposed to represent the feeling that I felt when my father passed away, and it's the best way I can put that feeling into a garden feature, really. And the rear section of the garden is a sunken courtyard based around a fire pit, and the fire pit represents my wife because it's the centre of the design, the fire in my life. And that sunken courtyard is surrounded by sandstone pillars, each representing a different person in my life. So all the plants I've selected in my garden do well in my garden at home, and a lot of plants I'm hoping the Europeans don't really know grow well in Sydney. We've got rounded buxus balls, we've got foxgloves, delphiniums, but then we've also got the classic Australian plants, the kangaroo paws and proteas and things like that. We have a rather unusual hedge that wraps around the garden, which is a low pleached oak hedge, which grows really well in Sydney and also really well in Europe. And the back section of the garden is more foliage based, a bit more tropical, and that's supposed to be more subdued and turn the energy into the sunken courtyard to sort of make that space a bit more intimate. What I hope people take away from this garden is a different look on Australian gardening, and I want people to understand that Australian gardens are all about passion and wanting to be outside, and I hope that they take away a real feeling of passion and ownership of the outdoor space. I've been coming to Chelsea for years and watching it on TV, and even in Australia it's known as the most prestigious garden show in the world, so to have my own garden, it's a bit nerve-wracking, but it's a dream come true.
Well, Charlie, your garden's a dream too. It has an ethereal quality, it glows, and that's without the tinder in the centre of this beautiful fire pit being lit. The steps and paving are a triumph of engineering, as is the pond that fills and then ebbs via a mechanical pump at the centre that draws out the water. I love the planting. It's a global mix of Australian tree ferns and granny's bonnets from the shires of England. But the main thing about this garden is the story it tells of life and death. It's intimate and it's deep, but at the same time, and most importantly, it's uplifting too. There have been some cracking Australian gardens here at Chelsea over the years, but does Charlie's heartfelt design deserve your vote? We'll find out on Friday. So how would today's designers feel about winning the People's Choice Award 2015?
I think winning the People's Choice Award for us would probably be more than the gold medal, only because you know that you've connected with the masses, with the people. You know, the judges can judge a garden, but the people are the ones that see it, and you know they can connect to it. You can maybe create this, you know, an in-depth personal connection with someone, or it's something that they've never seen before. So I think just that connection with the public, I think, would mean a lot to us.
Yeah. Can't add to that. That's exactly how I feel.
For me to win the People's Choice, obviously personally, would be brilliant. But I think more than anything, you know, the Homebase sort of academy, the kids that I'm working with, for them, I think it would be brilliant that the public just sort of went tick and, yeah, we like what you're working on. I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
I'd be really delighted to win the People's Choice Award. That this design would come through, which is a strong design, it's bold, and if it were voted for, I'd be really, really excited, and I think me and the team would be very proud.
To win the People's Choice Award for me would be a very personal thing, in that it would mean an appreciation of the work that I've done and the hard work that my team have put into the garden, but also that they've taken a positive attitude towards the message that I'm trying to put across about Islam and Arabic culture.
Going to the Chelsea Flower Show is all about producing a garden that's going to be judged by professionals, but really in everyday life I create garden for people. So if the people were to say I won the People's Choice Award, well, that would be like a best in show for me.
So remember, you can vote on Thursday the 21st of May from 1 p.m. until midnight. But please don't call after this time because the phone lines will be closed, but you might still be charged.
And as our exciting finale approaches, you can see our last 5 fabulous show gardens tomorrow. But until then, from us, goodbye.
Goodbye.